Welcome back to Just Ask George. David Wolf, affiliate banker with BH Capital, along with the head dude, George Lovato Jr. Not only is the head dude of BH Capital, but as we talked about, and we've talked about frequently on the program, he's the author of The Obstacle Course, and the account of really you in your mid to late 20s or early 20s, whenever that was, learning everything there is to know about business on the fly, in real time.
On the fly, real time. When the idea came about to start the rental car business, step number one was getting a bank loan with, as we talked about in part one, a really bad business plan. But fortunately, I had a relationship with the banker, so we were able to go down that path, and with some guidance from him, I was able to put together the very first loan. Actually, two loans, one with him and his bank, because one of the issues was he was lending me all he could lend me because it was such a small bank that I was already at the bank's lending limit.
Wow.
So I had to go to another friend, Pat, who was in the automotive finance industry. That's what they did, and he basically provided the rest of the financing I needed, and that was the genesis of opening the door. So you talk about being baptized by fire. You're 22 years old, you're out there rocking and rolling, and someone says, "Oh, this is easy. You start the business by borrowing money."
Start by creating debt.
Yeah.
What were the purposes of the financing in that initial stage, the first banker and then subsequently the other guy? What was the form of the formation of capital?
One was a line of credit that I used for both buying cars and then making payroll and covering timing differences. And the other one was a series of term notes that Pat provided on each individual car.
Whoa!
So it was all under the corporate name with my buddy and partner co-signing on all of that. And then we had to do something really stupid, which most people
can you put your own stories in stupid without a license? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, it is. It's going to go in there. And so, as part of the security to the line of credit, they had made us put up our houses as additional collateral. But as I said in the book, my wife has been my best business partner. Always very supportive of. She says, "Okay, yeah." She says, "I think look, you got to go do your own thing, and let's give it a go." So off we go. So there's baptism by fire lesson one, which was bank financing, and that essentially got us over the hurdle, got us going. As time passed, I outgrew the bank. I had to go to another bank. Little did we know that bank was on the verge of failing. However, they did make a series of loans to us. And then suddenly one day when it was time to really expand the fleet, because the business is just skyrocketing, we were told by the banker that he just can't provide any more money, and he wouldn't tell us why. It's because, there's a regulator around in my front office, and he's about ready to put cuffs on me. I don't know. I mean,
really? Yeah, right.
But anyway, so there was something to be learned there about knowing the health and readiness and capability of your own bank.
Well, I think a lot of entrepreneurs listening probably think the bank is, it's like the god of finance. Of course they're good. They're regulated. I'm safe.
That wasn't the case, so I had to learn that too.
And I know that you've consulted with banks that are in various forms of various stages of health, shall we say, over the years, right?
One and only time the comptroller of the currency was injuncted from closing a bank was because of me, but that was years later after I'd learned all the do's and don'ts in the banking industry. So the business expands. Here we are. So now we've done one bank loan, two bank loans, moved out of one bank because we've hit their lending limit, gone to another bank. Now we need more money to expand the fleet even greater. And now the business model is now changing. We're now taking what is a successful business model. We're going to transplant that in the form of franchises around the country.
Yes.
So there's another level of financing that's needed, and so now I've got to raise equity. Never done it before, didn't know how to do it. Was told that's what I needed to do by my first banker, God rest his soul, Ben Naranjo. And he said, "George, this is what you need to do. Here's where you got to go. This is the kind of money you're going to need." And he said, when we get that money in, then you'll be able to open a few of these locations by selling these franchises. Then you're going to be ready at that point to take the company public. But you'll need some other interim pieces of financing prior to that.
Was the idea to take the company public his idea, or was it yours?
My dad and I had played in the penny stock markets, and we'd seen small companies raise $500,000, $1 million. We knew we needed more than that.
Okay.
And so the in vogue offering, the size of it was between $2 and $5 million. That was where investment bankers were kind of hot. It was a real hot little space. And so I knew we were going to need big money, and I didn't know how to raise it privately, so I thought that the public model was going to be ultimately going to help us launch the system, the reservation system, to where it needed to be. Ben had been involved with a lot of companies that had gone public. So as a commercial banker, he'd been on the sidelines watching. So he kind of, he was the little guy on my shoulder, and he introduced the very first investment banker that made the very first offer to take us public. Yeah. So I had to raise equity. So I went to my friends, family, and former enemies. I went to my father-in-law, my wife's uncle, a couple of our close family friends, my dad, my mom, my brother-in-law, my sister, and we raised about $250,000.
Wow.
Yeah, so
friends,
that was my
family,
first foray.
And former enemies.
Friends, family, and former enemies. And we thought that once that money was raised, that was going to, provide the fuel in the tank to pay the expenses to get the company public and then get it to the. And meanwhile, back at the ranch, I'm running the business. I'm selling franchises. I'm running a rental car business. I felt like I had two flippers in my hands and 600 burgers on the griddle.
Yeah, I was going to ask, were they actually franchises or were they licensees?
These were licensees in the beginning, and the intent was to file an FTC circular. But we really couldn't handle all that at the same time. One, the documentation required to go public, and then on top of that, another circular.
Yeah.
So we said, look, let's get this done, and then we'll go that way. And so there was the process. Things were supposed to happen within 12 months to get the company public. Bad guys enter the arena with us. They try to take us to the cleaners. We kick them out of the company. We go back to the drawing board. Underwriter 1 has us file a registration statement but couldn't syndicate it. Underwriter 2 goes bust on us right under our very nose as we were ready to launch the second registration. Underwriter 3 wants to actually do it from soup to nuts, but he was actually leaving one firm that had just gone bust, and so he wanted to sort of be my wingman, and so I had already built a syndication in the very first attempt, and I still had those interested people because they liked the concept.
And this was a process, literally, of pitching it to the different...
Door-to-door on Wall Street, Pine Street, Broad Street.
I mean, that's a whole... Then there's chapters in the book as well. I mean, that whole experience of learning how to do that, and I've asked you, maybe it was a year ago, what's the magic to how do you sell your company to prospective investors?
The 10-word explanation, the 50-word explanation, and the 1,000-word explanation.
Okay.
You got to be able to capture their attention like that, bait them a little bit more, and then give them the
So it's this progression, folks, this idea that it's the tease and a little bit more and a little bit more. Okay. And there's an art to that.
So knocking on the doors, I had that initial group the very first time, and they really liked the company. And so now this guy wants to be my wingman. He felt he could knock the doors down on a few other firms and get them involved, and then we would essentially have enough to syndicate the initial offering and create aftermarket in the stock, meaning the stock would trade.
Okay.
So Chuck became the wingman, and he's kind of a composite of a couple of different people that were involved at the time. And when you read about him in the book,
terms of how he's named and such. Yeah.
And so off to the races we go. Now, enter Steve, wonderful little Steve Schwartz, all but 5 feet tall, had connections with Hollywood, and as a result, we needed more money. So he infused 6 figures into the company to bridge the company over to get through the underwriting. We refile the registration statement, pay the auditors, pay the lawyers, so on and so forth. and Steve goes bust.
Right.
And the syndication group is together, okay? And they're going, oh, my God, how many times can this happen to this company? So finally, one of the original guys in the very first offering, very tall, handsome, gray-haired investment banking guy, Bob Grady, told Chuck, look, we'll go on the cover of his deal. He deserves to get it done.
Wow.
And I go in and pitch him and showed him our, essentially this is the business model, but oh, by the way, here's our syndication and this is what we're going to do for aftermarket support of the stock. And it went that fast after that.
You've learned a lot about the whole ecosystem of going public, but the aftermarket support is hugely important to you, or is it?
I had a guy come to me the other day that said, I'm gonna file a Form 10, and I'm gonna also file a bond offering, and and I said, as a self-underwriting, he says, yeah, but I'm gonna take this Form 10, and it's all gonna be done here sometime in July, and then I'm gonna take it to this investment banking firm and offer it and say, hey, we're ready to go. I said, anybody in the world can do the paperwork, the filing, the procedural elements of working with the SEC and getting. I mean, it takes a little talent, but that's easy.
Okay.
It's the syndication. That's the trick. Aftermarket is the trick. Shareholder relations planning, all of those elements, those are the important things. Anybody can file a registration statement. But if you don't have people buying what's being offered, c'est la vie. It's a kind of a Pyrrhic victory. Gee, I got an acceleration letter from the SEC, but I got nobody buying my stock.
It's a sales process at the end of the day, isn't it?
It is. You have to have a salient business model in order for it to be appealing. And remember, those guys have got to sell it too.
Yeah.
So they've got customers and clients and institutions.
So you have to give them the tools and the ammunition.
And they have to know that you're not going to go to the closing table, get your big oversized check. We had a closing and
right.
the check enlarged, and we're all standing holding it.
Right. Yeah. The cheesy shot.
Then you're gonna walk away. No, I had to go back to New York at least once a month, sometimes twice a month, and continue to tell the world the progress within the boundaries of what the SEC allows you to say, and subsequent 8Ks that are filed on a continuing basis. And you have to tell the story. You have to tell them, hey, we've hit benchmark 1, 2, 3, 4. This is what we're projecting. You put out an earnings release. There's just so many things you have to do.
Did the fact that you guys were public and needed to do that 8K reporting on a continuous basis, did that inform how you managed the business?
It does to an extent. It doesn't really give them the flavor of the ice cream. It just tells them there's ice cream in the box.
So you tell them what you can and what they need to know, but you don't.
Yeah, there's some things. When you're a public company, it's sort of like you're wearing a sheer chiffon dress. It's covered, but everybody can see.
Okay.
There's how much light you want to put in the back before. So you have to be careful about that because your competition's reading it too. And soon after, there started to become a number of knockoffs. But meanwhile, back at the ranch on the finance side, we owned an insurance company that insured the rental cars of the franchisees and ours. And that needed capital, so we had to put together a surplus note offering. Then we had to put a debt offering together. Then we spun out a leasing company because we were leasing the cars to the franchisees. And that we were going to take public, and we had to do a private placement for that. And
this sounds very vertically integrated.
It just kept on going.
You just kept stacking. This company needs this. We can form that. This form, right?
Yeah, that's exactly how it fed.
Created your own needs.
So in the course of 5 years, from the very beginning of the business to the time that it got public, I had literally used every single method of finance known to man.
BH Capital was born. Because you are the encyclopedia of structured finance.
Well, thank you for saying that, and I'll give you your $20 after the show.
Well, he's going to feed me. That'll be enough. But but that's how this happened. The formation of George Lovato Jr. was by virtue of this cascade of we'll form this company and this company, and the methods of finance became more demanding and more complex, and you embraced, you went out and learned them.
Yeah, I had to.
You didn't
do
have
it.
a merchant banker that you could go to. One guy.
And as it was happening, people are still asking, "Gee, you got to write this down. You need to turn this into a book." And oh, by the way, would you help me with this financing?
Right.
Would you help me?
By the way,
put this together. You did that. I like to know how you did that.
Sure.
So on. So sort of on a parallel track. Soon after the doors were open at the rental car operation, BH Capital was formed, and I was helping other people. And I was just sharing my knowledge. That's all I was doing.
Yeah.
Now, as time has gone on, that's I've been involved in thousands of transactions, but the core of it is right there. Everything that you might want to know about in terms of starting up a business, managing the growth, and incorporating those various finance elements, that's what the obstacle course is about.
From a very human perspective.
From a kid bouncing around in the dark.
Unbelievable. The obstacle course.
And
is
some
the
say I still bounce around in the dark today. So
I've seen this. I'm usually here during daylight hours, so we'll leave that for another show. The obstacle course is the book. You can get more information at obstaclecoursebooks.com. George Lovato Jr.
We
today,
talk
you're
about
the guest, not the co-host.
Yeah. Today, I think it's important for everyone to know that the reason that we put the two-part series together is because we refer to it in all the programs,
right.
And everybody always emails in, "Hey, well, can you tell me more about that? You mentioned this. People that have bought the book, you mentioned this in there. Can you tell me more about that?" So I thought, this might be a good plan to tell our listeners.
No, I think it's brilliant. And did we want to talk at all about the ebook or no? We'll do that in another.
We have an ebook coming. I have an ebook coming out. We have an ebook coming out, and it is titled, which will be a later segment of Just Ask George.
All right. That's right.
Everything you always wanted to know about business, but were never taught. So, and it's going to talk about elements of finance, the who's, where do you go, how do you put it together, really all the mechanics involved in finance, and it'll be supported by all our Just Ask George shows, in addition to a little written narrative that goes along with it.
I love when he does those written narratives. A treasure trove of knowledge capital, the obstacle course, obstaclecoursebooks.com. We'll see you next time on Just Ask George. Thanks,
Dave. Great show.